Good afternoon, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed afternoon update on Tropical Low 010U and Tropical Low 11U developing now offshore from Western Australia. This is a significant tropical cyclone threat to Western Australia. Key word here is threat. There are still a lot of discrepancies in the forecast that we're going to iron out over the coming couple of days, and this is your latest information based off what the forecast is saying. It is as accurate as possible. It's an eclectic mix of all forecast model data and analysis right now. If you do end up enjoying this video, then please consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. But let's get stuck straight into things here with Tropical Low 10U, which is beginning to develop here just north of Exmouth here. It's about 1,000 kilometers towards the north-northwest of Exmouth. You can slowly start to see it spinning up, especially if you took a look at the satellite picture in the lower levels. You can see a lot of the cloud over the blue, that kind of really wispy sort of stuff that's a little bit hard to see. It's starting to spin up quite nicely, and then towards the southern side there are some good thunderstorms firing up. Now that means that this is a maturing tropical low at this time. It's beginning to get its act together. Now all of this convective stuff here is being blown up by an upper level low pressure system. Plenty of thunderstorms are being encouraged to develop across the Kimberley region of Western Australia, especially adjacent to the coastline. So if you do live in Broome or further towards the northeast of Broome, you'll find that it is going to be really stormy over the coming couple of days. Again, I'll get to the rainfall totals in just a few moments, but this is where we're expecting Tropical Low 11U to spin up. Now these two tropical lows are going to work together. They're very likely to become one system unless 11U forms significantly further towards the north, in which case it will either dissipate in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf or go into the Northern Territory as a bit of a rain depression. But these systems are both likely to merge into one another and then become a tropical cyclone in a couple of days towards the north of Exmouth. Now that's kind of the rundown of this system, but let's get into the really detailed forecast right now and talk about exactly what is expected over the coming couple of days. You can see the forecast models. This is the Eastern WF initializing this system as a very weak tropical low, of course, nothing really to write home about at this time, and this tropical low is going to steadily weaken. The reason why it's going to weaken is Tropical Low 11U is going to begin to strengthen. They're going to sort of absorb each other and become one very large elongated low pressure system. Now 11U is going to be concentrated up here in the low pressure system, if you'd like, the eastern head of this big low pressure system, this massive gyroscope of low pressure offshore from Western Australia is going to be swinging and flinging a whole load of rainfall into the Kimberley coastline. North of Broome expecting some really healthy rainfall accumulations, but you can see from tonight into early tomorrow morning especially, and then the real rainfall beginning to pipe up from tomorrow afternoon, continuing through Friday, Saturday and Sunday across the Kimberley region. That's where the real rainfall is going to be. Now over the coming couple of days, these two low pressure systems, or the two heads of this low pressure system, are going to come closer and closer together and then form kind of a common centre of very weak but still very broad low pressure towards the north of Port Hedland. At least this is what the forecast is suggesting at this time. Now what this means is that the rainfall will continue to pipe up over the eastern side of this system, where you've got those onshore winds bringing in significant rainfall. So wherever the low pressure system gets itself sat, which is probably going to be towards the north of Port Hedland, around sort of Bordeaux Island by Friday afternoon and into Saturday morning, which is what this frame is looking at right now, anywhere towards the east of that, so Broome, Derby, communities right up towards Pilbara are going to have tons of rainfall streaming in ashore there. Now thankfully this is a very remote part of the Kimberley coastline. It's a very remote part of Australia in general, and along the coastline you could probably count on your fingers how many people live in some of the shires up here. It is really isolated, so flooding is not a major concern for a lot of people at this time, but there are a lot of cattle ranchers out here that are going to have problems with this significant rainfall that's expected to move in here. We're talking hundreds of millimetres falling on consecutive days up here between Derby and Kulamburu especially, and it is also reciprocated between other forecast models. I mean, the GFS is a low resolution model, so they really don't get the accurate picture here. The Axis G3 also calling for significant rainfall here. That's the Bureau of Meteorology's own forecast model, but between Friday, Saturday and Sunday, really substantial rainfall is expected to materialise. Through Friday and then into Saturday morning, we're going to see this low pressure system get further and further off the coastline. It's also going to begin to rapidly start tightening up, especially on Saturday morning and into Saturday afternoon. Now what this means is this system is going to become better and better organised through Saturday, and it will start its first phase of intensification. It's not expected to get to tropical cyclone status right out of the gate, and it is going to be hovering very close to the coastline, which means it's going to have a lot of land interaction. And land interaction with WA, it's often not a bad thing when you're talking about the Kimberley region. It can still funnel in huge amounts of rainfall and even intensify right on the Kimberley coastline. But when it's adjacent to the Pilbara, because of the convective energy that comes off the Pilbara area, you often are talking about huge amounts of wind shear. Now, coupled with the fact that there's very warm sea temperatures here, a lot of evaporation, a lot of upwards motion in the atmosphere, wind shear values are going to be quite hostile for this system. And given that it's already going to be quite a large system, it is going to take take its merry time to organise. We're talking at least a couple of days here. By Sunday evening, it's starting to move towards the west now. This is when it's starting to pick up its actual motion. We're going to really start to see this system begin its final stages of development and its run up towards tropical cyclone status. If it isn't already there by Sunday night, it is actually likely to become a tropical cyclone late Sunday night or very early Monday morning as it passes towards the north of Karratha. So it'll be a cyclone by the time it passes to the north of Barrow Island, pretty much guaranteed. But this system here will then begin its development. It's going to be tight enough and kind of small enough, even though it's going to be a really big system, it's going to be small enough to become a tropical cyclone and become properly organised. And this means that a lot of rainfall is going to be dragged in once again on the eastern side of the system and also down in towards the southeastern side of this system. The eastern side of this system throughout the storm's lifespan is expected to be by far the wettest until it turns to extratropical, which is talk for a later part in the video. Now this means that anywhere towards the eastern, the south of where this low pressure system is going to be passing, or the centre of the storm is going to be passing, the rainfall is going to be huge there, which means the heavy falls are going to leave the Kimberley region by Sunday evening and they're going to pipe up by late Saturday night into Sunday morning along the coastline adjacent to Broome through to Port Hedland, and then Sunday afternoon and evening around Port Hedland, extending in towards Karratha by Monday morning. Heavy falls are expected from lines of showers that are going to be streaming in ashore here, at least as per what the forecast is suggesting right now. But given it's only about 4 or 5 days out now, we're talking about this happening late this weekend and into early Monday by the start of next week. It is a very certain situation at this time. It's looking very likely. In fact, there will be changes to the forecast, of course. There will be refinements to the exact numbers of wind and rainfall observations that are expected, and also where this storm's going to be tracking. There will be little wobbles in the track, but the gist of it is the heavy falls are expected to start by Sunday morning for Port Hedland, Sunday afternoon for Karratha, and then about Sunday evening into Monday morning for communities further south. Onslow and Exmouth will probably have to wait until late Monday to get the proper rainfall there. And this system will then begin probably a brief phase of quite quick or even rapid intensification throughout Monday. It will likely peak on Monday or into Tuesday, most likely Tuesday by the looks of things as a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone. You can see it here, a pressure of 976 millibars. That can be stretched out to almost a Category 4, but I think that's just going to be a little bit too strong just given the size and how much area the system is going to be taking up. The rainfall will ease off Monday night around the Port Hedland area, Tuesday morning for Karratha, but there still will be plenty of showers streaming in for the inflow bands of this system. In terms of those wind speeds, the forecast models aren't doing a really good job at this time, considering you can see here a pressure of 980 millibars and it's barely got gale force winds around it. I think that's a little bit of a boogie on the forecast this time. It's obviously going to be substantially stronger than that. At that point, it'll certainly be Category 1, maybe even Category 2 strength tropical cyclone status as it passes towards the north of Exmouth. But cyclone force winds are now a risk for locations between Broome right down to Carnarvon, especially between Exmouth and Karratha, and especially for offshore locations such as Beddoe Island, Barrow Island, and some of the communities on the islands. They're certainly at a high chance of cyclone winds. There is a small chance of severe tropical cyclone winds around the Barrow Island area, but that is very much heavily dependent on how strong this system does get in its lifespan. I don't really give it a high chance this time, probably about 10 or 15%. But certainly if you live between Exmouth and Port Hedland, start preparing as if a Category 1 or Category 2 strength tropical cyclone is going to be impacting your area. If you've only got the means to, or you don't have enough time, a Category 1 or 2 tropical cyclone preparation will certainly be adequate, but I would recommend preparing for a severe tropical cyclone, just considering the fact that previous forecast runs have suggested this system getting quite strong and the conditions are actually very favourable for tropical cyclone genesis here. It's much better to be safer than it is to be sorry, but I think the chance of a severe tropical cyclone impact on the mainland West Australian coastline is very unlikely at this time. It's not overly possible, and certainly the significant impacts will be reserved for the locations, the offshore locations, and onto some of those oil rigs as well. This will also cause some pretty significant disruptions to shipping traffic coming out of both Karratha, Dampier, and Port Hedland, which will be interesting to see the financial impact of this. Normally, these weak tropical cyclones, even though they are weak, they can rain havoc on Western Australia's mining industry, which is often the biggest cost of these systems here. Now, the forecast does suggest this system to just rapidly develop very quickly and in actually rapid intensification right through Monday and Tuesday. And it gets up to a reasonably respectable intensity. I mean, you can see here peak winds of around 50 or 60 knots, probably gusting up to about 90 knots here around the centre of the system. So it does tell me that the system's actually likely to be a lot stronger earlier on in its lifetime, just given that that's the forecast there. Depending on where this system tracks, Exmouth could be in the firing line of some significant tropical cyclone impacts, but again, the other forecast models haven't really been on board with the Exmouth impact. I mean, you can see the GFS pulling the system well offshore here, but the GFS hasn't been a really reliable model for for this system so far. The axis G3 also keeping this system substantially further enough offshore as to where Exmouth isn't receiving significant cyclone winds. This system could skim the coastline of Western Australia. There is always the chance of that, but it isn't a very likely chance this time, and I think the closest feasible approach that this system is going to be taking is what the Eastern Bear forecast, which is the one that we're looking at right now, is going to be taking. So what I'm showing you is sort of more or less the worst case scenario, but I am showing you that just so that everyone can get an idea of exactly what's expected, and I guess to prepare for the absolute worst and hope for the best in a situation like this. This is not a significant tropical cyclone either. A lot of the Facebook guys will want you to think about that, and there's bound to be some awful Facebook fake news in regards to this system. So again, don't panic in regards to this system here. It's Western Australia's Pilbara coastline after all. I mean, pretty much every home there post 2010, post Cyclone Rusty, is built to withstand a Category 4 strength tropical cyclone, and this system will just be a bit of wind and a bit of rainfall for the most part, so it's not going to feel like a significant tropical cyclone at all. So again, do not panic unless there's a major change in the forecast today or tomorrow. Again, I really don't foresee this system becoming a massive problem to the West Australian coastline. Now, pushing this forecast right forward, and this is the kind of what's concerned me the most, not so much for the tropical cyclone impact, but for the stuff that's going to be said on the news and across Facebook, just in regards to this system here. But by the 25th and the 26th of January, just in time for Australia Day in the southwest of Western Australia, we get this tropical cyclone Alby-like impact into the southwest corner. Now, this is highly unlikely for multiple reasons. Now, the other forecast models are calling for this system to be far enough off the coastline as to where it gets dragged into the southwest Indian Ocean through here. But if it does veer south enough, it will get pulled into the jet stream and then dragged into the southwest corner or the midwest of Western Australia. So there is the chance of that happening. It is still a very low chance, but I mean, there's only one forecast model kind of backing it, and it is a new thing on the forecast as well. Plus, an impact of this magnitude here, where you're talking about sustained winds up to about 50 knots and gusts well in excess of 70 or 80 knots here, up to or in excess of 130 to 140 kilometre an hour winds here. That is absolutely massive and would be a very big problem as well for the southwest of Western Australia. And the other thing that's kind of telling me that this is kind of boogies on the forecast is the amount of rainfall that's expected just over a 3-day period here. Towards the south side of this system, you'd be talking about 200 or 300 millimeters of rainfall. If a cyclone came down this far, it would most likely transition into an extratropical system. It would be moving fast enough as to where the rainfall isn't a significant threat, and you'd be seeing peak rainfall accumulations around sort of that 10 to 40 millimeter mark. It won't be significant at all on the rainfall side of things, which is kind of the dead giveaway that this forecast solution here is kind of boogies at this time. Sea temperatures would support that though. I mean, the system would be able to hold some moisture and some energy together right down to about Jurien Bay when they do actually then fall off a cliff and the system would begin an extratropical transition. Those sea temperatures are very warm, and especially off the Pilbara coastline as well, they are extremely warm, 31, 32, even 33 degrees Celsius as you get right up towards the coastline. So sitting at around 3 or 4 degrees above average, there is a lot of energy in the ocean for this system here. But again, the reason why it's not becoming a monster tropical cyclone as per what the other forecast models were saying earlier on in the week is because it is going to be a large system and it will take its time to intensify. The forecast is becoming a lot more clearer right now, so we don't really have much to doubt in regards to this forecast, which is a really good thing, that's for sure. Let's take a look at rainfall accumulations. We're going to take this not quite day by day, but just period by period. So over the next 5 days, over in the Kimberley region, where the really significant rainfall is expected to pipe up from tonight, especially through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the Kimberley region, rainfall accumulations will be in excess of about 200 millimeters, and probably quite a lot more than that. We'll be talking about accumulations or isolated accumulations up to about 400 or 500 millimeters on the Kimberley coastline if that rainfall really does materialize there. Derby seems to be far enough away from the immediate coastline where they're only going to pick up about 150 millimeters, at least on this forecast, which I do believe to be a valid number, but I reckon a lot of locations in the Kimberley as far inland to about Fitzroy Crossing, maybe even across to Kununurra, will pick up at least 100, probably up to about 150 millimeters as well. Then that rainfall is going to pipe up along the coastline, so from Friday the 17th to Tuesday the 21st of January, you can see the rainfall begins to pipe up along the Pilbara coastline because of the inflow band to this system here, and I think again this number might be a little bit bullish. 400 millimeters on the forecast from showers streaming in. That's certainly quite an aggressive number to have on the forecast here, but I do definitely reckon 200 millimeters is inbound for Karratha, Port Hedland, about 150 for Onslow, and maybe 200 again for Exmouth, and probably quite a bit more for La Grande Island and Barrow Island, for example, probably between 250 and 350 for those locations, just from these showers that are going to be coming through. It will be tending to steady rainfall at times, but I do believe right now, just given the fact that this system is going to be quite far offshore, I think that the most amount of rainfall that Karratha or Port Hedland will pick up will be 200 millimeters, and it will mostly be from showers A much more reasonable number, I reckon, for both Karratha and Port Hedland would be between 80 and 150 millimeters. So I'd expect 150 millimeters coming through for Karratha. Anything more than that will kind of be a bit of a bonus, probably a bit of an ugly bonus, to be honest. I don't think they need any more than 150 millimeters, but again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. I'm not 100% sure of the weather and how it's been there over the wet season so far. But yeah, I think about sort of that 80 to 150 millimeter mark is a plausible number. Again, it really does depend on where the system tracks. The forecast that we're looking at right now has this system tracking quite close to the coastline. If it heads further offshore, not only will the winds be not much of a problem for the Pilbara coastline and for the southwest of Western Australia as a whole, need I mention that? We'll go into detail about why that is. But if this system does track close to the coastline, we'll be seeing a proper tropical cyclone impact through the West Australian Pilbara region. If it is far enough offshore, then the rainfall will be minimal, the winds will be pretty much negligible, and we won't be seeing a proper tropical cyclone impact, which will be good to see. Raleigh Shoals, though, I'm going to be watching that weather station like a hawk over the coming couple of days. Thankfully, it's been restored since Tropical Cyclone Ilsa last year, so it will be really interesting to see what wind observations they come up with as this tropical cyclone forms. Still a lot of details that need to be ironed out, but we're going to know tomorrow or the next day, and I'm going to be releasing updates on this throughout the weekend as well. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you have enjoyed this video. It's been a much more kind of calm and laid back one. I don't want anyone to be panicking about this system right now. Just prepare as if a category 1 or 2 strength tropical cyclone is coming in, and if you've got the means to, probably prepare for a category 3 strength system, although that will more than likely probably be about a 95% chance of being overkill at this time. I think that this system is going to kind of be a bit of a letdown for the Pilbara region. Don't get trapped in the Facebook fake news area. Don't believe everything you read until you check other forecasts as well. There's a lot of good guys out there that are giving proper kind of calm and collected forecasts as well, but there's also a lot of kicking, screaming and shouting on the Facebook groups, just desperate for clicks and attention. So again, take every forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt, cross-reference it with a bit of meteorology, stay on top of the information with the local news and the Shire officers as well. It's very important that you stay calm and collected in a situation like this. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today. A special shout out, of course, to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now, and I could not run the show without them. Their support is much appreciated. Subscribe if you do want to see more updates like this as well. Leave a like on the video if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.